My name is Jessica Goldberg, and I am a prevention specialist from the Education Development Center, and it's been my privilege to be supporting some of the Coalition's efforts this year, including helping with the creation of these webinars. I'm joined today by two local experts in mental health promotion and substance misuse prevention, Angela Osei-Mensah, clinical social worker with the Dedham Youth Commission, and Chrissy King, director of the Dedham Organization for Substance Awareness. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to start our session off by saying welcome again to you all, and thank you for joining us. So the Coalition is hosting these sessions to provide parents with information and resources that they can use to help guide their children and support them in making healthy choices. I'm sure many of you already know how powerful the role of parents and caregivers can be in helping youth to navigate making positive decisions. And this is especially true when parents have articulated really clear expectations for their kids and when they are educated and empowered to be that strong voice that contradicts so many of the other messages that youth receive on a regular basis regarding substance use. And so these are the principles that are underlying the information that we'll be sharing during this presentation. And so we want to quickly share a little information that the Coalition has collected through its parent survey. And this is an anonymous, confidential online survey for Dedham's parents and guardians of children in the grades 6 through 12. And it asks questions about parental attitudes, perceptions, and their behaviors surrounding underage substance use. And it highlights many of the things that parents in Dedham are doing well to support their kids' healthy development. So you can see on the screen that 96% of parents surveyed think it's wrong for children to drink without parent supervision. And I can also tell you that 90% or more also have clear rules about the use of different substances like alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, electronic cigarettes, prescription drugs, and they communicate those rules to their kids. The survey also noted lots of other positive things that parents do with monitoring their kids' behavior or whereabouts, with 94% saying that they monitor the activities of their child and their friends when they're at home, and 98% of survey respondents reporting that they engage their child in conversation to learn about their activities when coming home from being out with friends. And this monitoring piece is so important. It can be really protective for youth, as many parents in Dedham are aware, I'm sure. And we definitely want to acknowledge how challenging it can be also. Some surveys, 53% of parents indicated that they've allowed their child to have friends over when no adults were home. But what's great to note is that number has actually dropped 10% over the past 2 years, with parents now reporting higher rates of monitoring their child overall. On a similar note, when parents set those clear rules and expectations about substance use, we know their kids listen to them and are more likely to abide by them. But when those messages are less clear, it can be really confusing to youth. So even though the vast majority of parents think it's wrong for kids to drink, almost half of 12th grade parents that responded to the survey said they've allowed their kids to attend parties where drinking occurs. And we know that having access to alcohol is something that increases the likelihood that youth will use alcohol. And so going to these parties is definitely a risk factor. And actually 76% of youth that drank alcohol in the past month when they were surveyed on the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey in 2018 actually said that they had obtained that alcohol from a party. So just something interesting to note. And access in the home can also be a risk factor. And 28% of youth that drank alcohol in the past month from that survey said that they actually took that alcohol from home without their parents' knowledge. So we see this parental monitoring of alcohol in the home going up over time as well. But you'll see on the slide that only a small subset of parents take it that one step further and actually lock up substances in the home, which can be a very effective strategy to consider. So since so many youth do actually get their alcohol from home. And beyond access, on our last webinar last week, we introduced many of the other factors that can increase risk that youth will use substances, one of which is to experience heightened stress or trauma or mental health challenges. And so to say a little bit more about this, I'm going to turn this over to our co-presenter, Angela. So Angela, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. So now, parents here, we want to offer some brief psychoeducation and increase awareness around possible connections that could explain the findings that we discovered through the youth risk survey. So here we want to shed some light with regard to what may be happening with our youth. So in speaking about stress, now we do know that there are a number of possible sources for stress that impact our youth. So here we're talking about school frustrations and demands, problems with friends and peers, involvement in too many activities, or even just, the overall challenge of being a teenager and just dealing with the changes in the body that come with it. So now if you add trauma, now what's happening now, we are seeing that many children in our day have been exposed to traumatic life events and situations at some level, unfortunately. Now, examples under this category include community and school violence. It should be noted that just media exposure to all of this also qualifies. Terrorism, natural disasters, suicide, abuse, neglect, medical trauma, and then, just the very situation that we're going through, in our day, COVID-19. So now, if in connection here, when we're looking at these stressors, there's a place where increased risk factors can actually expedite the process here. So situations like, say, for example, family financial issues, chronic illness, mental health diagnosis, serious problems within the family, let's see what else, unsafe living environment or neighborhood, or even family history of substance use or mental health issues kind of fall under that category. And if we're talking lack of protective factors, just a simple situation of a student not really engaging in the school day with school activity, and just a lack of connection with supportive adults or community. Now, all of these factors together completely expose you to the chance of substance misuse and substance disorders subsequently. So next slide, please. All right. So, here we'd like to briefly highlight some important things to consider when thinking about the effects that occur when stress and trauma kind of impact the brain. So the brain is so complex, and there are a number of regions which impact, us daily through our brains. So here we're going to only highlight 3. We'd be here forever if we talked about the rest. But we're going to highlight the survival center, midbrain, and cortex. Now, the survival center is responsible for automatic functioning, automatic response, and it's also responsible for our threat response, otherwise known as the fight or flight piece. Now, the midbrain is responsible for emotional control, sensory functioning, vision, hearing, motor control, and temperature control, where it's the cortex that's responsible for intellectual functioning, judgment, planning, moral assessment, future planning, and executive functioning. Now, looking at the slide, we see a highlight here of the impact that stress and trauma has. Now, looking at this first piece over here on, the left with the 3-year-old children, we've got this first, this example here. The first example is representation of a normal brain of a 3-year-old, okay? And now if you look to the image right next to it, you see the situation of extreme neglect. Now there's marked difference. If you talk, in talking about extreme neglect, what fits under that category? The thought there is, say, for example, situation where a parent has chronic mental illness or chronic illness where they're not able to tend to their child, or even situation around, say, opiate abuse or substance use, where a parent is not really able to give their child the attention and even just address the needs that the child has. So here you see a significant, and this is a 3-year-old, okay, so significant marked difference in the brain structure there. Now, looking next to that, you have the image of a healthy brain, and so it's not clear what the age here, but, what we do know about PTSD is that there are some, there have been findings around the fact, findings to the fact that there are significant, or there is significant impact that the brain kind of goes through, endures when an individual has been exposed to trauma altogether. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, I think the common thing that people think is it's just kind of slated to that war veteran, But that's also, an individual who's had a succession of abusive situations, an individual who lives in a crime-ridden or even just an unsafe environment. So those all qualify for post-traumatic stress disorder, or just even an individual who's had just a number of stressful situations, traumatic situations happen to them. Now, one thing to note here too is early trauma and stress is linked in a sense to situations around slow language and reading, poor decision-making skills, memory problems, attention problems, aggressive behavior. Now, onward, these situations, as we think of the progression from youth to adolescence, they can create significant risk for, in a way where there's tendency to kind of slate towards situations or decisions around alcohol use, tobacco use, or any other substance use, marijuana, et cetera. So, choices like this can lead to school failure, social and relational problems, suspension, delinquency, prison, teen pregnancy, et cetera. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now highlighting the youth risk survey for our students in Dedham, what we saw and what came up was that 33% reported that life was very stressful in the past 30 days. Okay, 22% reported that they were experiencing depressive symptoms in the past year, or that they had, and 13% had seriously considered suicide in the past year. So that is definitely something to take note of. Other things that came up in the survey: 11% reported that they'd injured themselves in the past month. 17% had little interest or pleasure in doing things often or very often in the past 2 weeks. 29% had trouble sleeping or slept too much often or very often in the past 2 weeks. Another significant one here, 37% of our Dedham youth had been concerned about a student in a way that they might hurt themselves in the past 12 months. Okay, so in the past 12 months, 37 reported that they had been concerned about a peer hurting themselves. But here's the key: only 7% told an adult at school that student, their friend, their peer, was thinking about hurting themselves. All right, next slide. So who can support our youth? The thought here is everyone, okay? Now, what was found through the youth risk survey was that in the past 12 months, youth reported that 47% of youth stated that they spoke to their friends around the same age. So they confided in friends, okay? So 47%. Now, 37% reported that they spoke to parents or relatives. 18% reported that they spoke to school counselors, therapists, or psychologists. Mental health professionals outside of school, 16% reported that, and 14% reported other adults. Now, I want to circle back to the first point here where kids, 47% of kids spoke and reported that they spoke to their peers. Now, while I think it's good that students are speaking to each other regarding their mental health concerns and struggles, I have to stress that is actually not the safest, effort, plan, thought. The thing here to think about is that, obviously youth are not able to handle the situations and struggles that maybe their peers are dealing with, and not to mention the fact that it might be more serious than they're able to measure. So parents, I really would stress or do stress that, you encourage your child to talk to you about that, or talk to maybe a school counselor about those situations, just so they're not taking that on themselves, because again, it can be a dangerous situation. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what can parents do? Okay, so now I know parents, you guys talked about this with the last webinar. Talk to your kids often about not using substances. Now the key words here, talk and often. Okay, so parents, I know, don't be discouraged, don't be, in any way disheartened by the eye rolling and all that, but do know this: kids are listening. They do listen. Think about you and how, at this point, maybe you've kind of come to the conclusion that, oh my gosh, I sound like my mom or my dad, whatever. Why is that? Because when you were younger, you were listening, right? And so remembering the things that your parents told you over and over again. And I have to say, too, that, when I speak with kids, in the therapeutic forum, believe me, I get that reporting. My mom always says that, or I say something and it's kind of like, oh, my mom told me that. So do know they're listening, okay? Now, the next one, eat dinner together as a family as often as possible. I have to say I love this one. Now, it seems so small, but do know this. Research is showing that this is significant in terms of protective factor. Those the relationship that, your child, your teen has with you is important. It's critical. And so now, given the situation that we're in, with COVID-19, we're forced to kind of do these things, right? So before there were distractions and different things, whether it was a phone, whatever. But parents, I would say this, if you have not created this habit, I would say create it. And if you have already, maintain it. So maintain it past all of that, because believe me, that definitely bears weight for kids and really has shown. We've seen that this really is impactful with regard to protective factor. Now, other things you want to consider, parents, or you should consider. Monitor alcohol and other substances in the home and keep them locked up. Now, I can't stress that enough, and I know Jessica spoke about that earlier. And lastly, find resources to support youth and other adults struggling with substance use or mental health issues. Now, parents, there are a lot of local resources that that are available to, your child or any adult that you may know is struggling with these issues. So now I'm going to pass it over to Chrissy, who's going to tell you more about that.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. So as Angela said, I'm going to talk just a little bit about some local and national substance use resources and also mental health resources, because right now we're in the midst of a mental health crisis for many people, but this is going to continue to be relevant throughout your life, throughout your child's life. So I'll start with the SAMHSA National Helpline. That is available 24/7, 365 days a year, and they can help refer adults and teens to mental, behavioral, and substance use resources. Massachusetts also has its own substance use helpline, which is great. You can either click on this link here or call this number, and they have technicians on the line who can help. They can even take your insurance and help you find the treatments that you need for your substance use, and that's for both adults and youth, which is amazing. I also especially want to highlight that DOSA has put together a mental health and sobriety support resource website, so that's going to have most of these resources from the webinar as well as others. The thought being that this is, right now is a very particularly difficult time, but even more so for people who are already struggling with mental health issues and substance use disorders. So we want to make that available, and it would be great if you could share that with your friends, your neighbors, because you never know who it's going to help. And for a lot of people, it's a struggle right now. And one of those resources is the Dedham chapter of the Learn to Cope. The facilitator, Joyce Burke, is amazing. She is more than happy to talk to any parent who is struggling with a family member's or loved one's substance use. Usually they meet Wednesdays from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at Mother Book, but right now they're meeting via Zoom. So I would really recommend that you text or call Joyce because she's serious when she says that she wants to reach out and talk to anyone who's going through this difficult time with their loved one's substance use, and it's really a tight-knit community. So moving on to mental health resources, one of the other amazing resources that Dedham has is the Interface Referral Service. It's partnered with William James College. This is available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and it is both mental health and substance use treatment, but primarily mental health. They can help you, if you're a Dedham resident, by referring you to treatment and help you to find a therapist that works for you or for your child. But again, that is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. If it's more of a crisis, Riverside Emergency Services is available 24/7 at this number, and they are able to do crisis counseling. They can refer you to telehealth. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to Riverside with any sort of behavioral or mental health crisis. This website here is more of a national one, but it has all sorts of amazing online resources for support for different types of adolescent mental health disorders, whether that's support groups, whether that's FACTS. So I would recommend checking out that website. And this should say Parenting 2020 show on YouTube, but you should check out also Angela's parenting show. So if you liked what Angela just presented, which I'm sure you did because it was great, you should check out her YouTube series. She makes these amazing, like just 5 to 6 minute videos on different parenting topics. I've watched them. They're really funny. They're really helpful. And it's drawing on expertise from our own local expert, Angela. So definitely check that out. We'll send out the link afterwards. And once again, just want to continue to highlight this mental health and sobriety support resource website that's on the town. Again, we want to share this widely, and we want to make sure that the town and DOSA is doing everything we can to connect people, adults and youth, with mental health resources during this time. So with that, and I apologize that we went a little bit over time. It's a lot of information, but it's really important. We want to open it up for questions. So please feel free to either speak into the mic if you've called in, or you could type it in to the chat. And of course, thank you for listening. Okay, we'll give it another minute for questions. Looks like nobody's typing into the chat box, but again, you can also, if you have questions, if you think of them later, you could also email me, kking@dedham-ma.gov. And if it's a question that would be better suited to Angela or Jessica, I could pass it off to them. But again, I think this issue of trauma, mental health, substance use is so important for parents. And it's a really complex one. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any sort of questions. Okay, so it looks like, oh wait, nope, wait, we're getting a question. We're getting a question. I'm going to bring it back to the resource page. Okay, Kim says thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you to everyone who called in and listened. Again, we will make this available. We will send out all of these links as well, because I think they should be on everybody's fridge in case of, you know, you never know when there's going to be a mental health emergency. And I think with that, we will conclude. We also are going to open up the mental health and substance use resource website on your computer so that you can take a look. Anything, Angela or Jess, you want to say?
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I don't, you know, I think you said it well, because if people have questions, they can just kind of forward it to you. And thanks for the wonderful, you know, comments that you made about the parenting show. So I guess I would just tell, you know, tell parents, you know, please, you know, also to the Dedham Youth Commission, we've got our Facebook page, so you can find out about different events, different you know, things that are happening for our youth that we are, you know, presenting for the community. So, you know, stay tuned to that, and I think that's it.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have our last webinar next week. Hope we'll see you there. And if not, have a good rest of your night.